What's up, guys? Your favorite player, One Richard here, back in Germantown, Tennessee to do another bourbon hunt. Now, since we're back in Germantown, it only made sense to go back to Corks. Now, this is not big Corks like we featured before, but a second smaller location that's tucked away in a little shopping center. Even though it is a smaller store, it still has some really cool and unique bottles that I'm sure you'll find interesting. So we're gonna go inside and take a look. We're going to do like we typically do and skip over the things you can find on just about everybody's shelf and really highlight the things that make this store special and unique. One of the first things that caught my eye was this selection of Pinhook whiskey. Now, these are things that I would typically just pass over, but with this being a wide selection, I just had a moment of pause. And I'm glad that I did, because I realized that there are some really unique things about these bottles. So first and foremost, I was wondering, is this sourced liquid? And in some cases it is. So you can see that their whiskey is distilled by Castle and Key and then bottled at a secondary location. Same is true with their rye and their cask strength. But when you move over here to these bottles, it says that they are distilled at Castle and Key and actually bottled on site. Now, another really neat thing that I've never paid too much attention to up until now is that some of these exclusive bottles actually have horses' names, the size, the color, and the gender. So for example, this high proof 2022, which is 116.4, the horse's name was Rye Money, 16 hands, chestnut in color, and his gender is a filly. Now, when we move further down, these last few bottles I found were distilled in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, which I believe is MGP, not 100% sure, but this is an 8-year coming in at 108.4 proof. And it is a rye, $78.99. Right next to it is another 8-year. This is their straight bourbon, coming in at 114.6 proof. Now this one is actually what originally caught my eye, which is their Australian single malt whiskey, cask strength, finished in red wine barrels. Let's see if the proof is on the back. 114.8 proof. And distilled in Melbourne, Australia. So that's pretty cool. Not something that I typically see in this area, but definitely really interesting. Another thing that caught my eye are these Doc Swinsons. Now, typically when I come across these, they have the black labels on them, but these appear to be a part of their exploratory cask series. There are 3 of them, each for $69.99 with different casks. The one that really catches my eye is this peated Scotch quarter casks. I love just the peated notes that you would get on different Scotch whiskeys, and even some familiar notes that you would see on like American single malts. Now, we featured Midwest spirits before on this channel, but one thing that really caught my eye was this double cask collection Oloroso wheat whiskey. Now, wheat whiskey tends to be a little bit more on the softer side as far as flavor profiles go, so that Oloroso sherry probably will give it some sweeter notes. In fact, here on the bottom where it talks about the different tasting notes, it says that you should get the vanilla, nutmeg, and cinnamon from that first oak cask, and the secondary cask is going to give you notes of cherry, dark chocolate, and raisin. Now, it comes in at 100 proof and has that price point of $75.99. I'm wondering if that is worth trying out. Now, next to it is the sherry cask finished bourbon, 6 years. Lots of similar notes as far as flavors go. I would imagine with it being a bourbon, with that rye note, that's going to be a little bit spicier, so probably heavier on that nutmeg and stuff, but also probably really good. This one has a slightly lower proof point. It looks like it's 97.25. Now, I've pointed this out before at some of the other stores, the cask strength Maker's Mark, that 7-year, 5-month age statement, $52.99. This one is just one that I see that just the price point is never consistent across the board. I've seen it for $45.99, $79.99, and just everywhere in between. This is actually one of the lower prices, so if this is something that you're wanting to try, then Corks on Farmington Road has it for a pretty reasonable price. Now, we mentioned earlier the Pinhook collection being distilled mostly by Castle and Key. So here are some of their bottles that they have here. They have a wheated, a bourbon, and a rye. So a lot of what you're going to see from other stores, all of these are sitting at, this is 100, 101, 100 proof for pretty reasonable prices, $46.99, $39.99, and $39.99. Now, the one that really is intriguing to me is this rye right here. That was the annual release 2024. Vino de Naranja barrels, 115.8 proof. This is cask strength. A really unique mash bill, 63% rye, 17% corn, and 20% malted barley, aged for 3 years. I'm really intrigued by this. I wonder what that secondary cask would do to the flavor of that rye, especially with that mash bill. I would imagine it's probably going to lean a little bit more on the sweeter side, especially with that lower rye proof point. Not try to avoid gimmicky things, but I did notice this right here, which caught my eye. This is the Elijah Craig Ryder Cup bourbon. Now, it says it's finished in toasted sugar, maple, and applewood staves. 94 proof for $79.99. Has a really cool topper there. I'm not interested enough to buy a bottle, but still, toasted sugar, maple, and applewood staves is really intriguing to me. Now, right below it is another thing that really caught my eye, and that is this black whiskey. It is Andine black corn whiskey. Now, I've heard of blue corn and red corn, but never black corn. Looks like it was distilled by Don Michael, a product of Peru. So, sounds really intriguing. $50.99, 90 proof whiskey. Might be something worth trying out. Right next to it, silver release bourbon whiskey crafted in our own Knoxville, Tennessee. Looks like it is 90 proof, single barrel bourbon. Not really seen or heard of this before. Maybe it's something I should try. $67.99. Don't know if that's worth it or not, but now, its neighbor is this Remus straight bourbon whiskey, but it is the highest rye. Now, if you know about bourbon, it has to be a minimum of 51% corn, but look at that rye percentage, 39% rye and 10% malted rye. So the other 49% of this is rye in one shape or another. Aged for 6 years, coming in at 109 proof. Huh. Really intriguing. A little bit down the ways, we have these two old Ezras, both of them with same age statements, 7 years apiece. This rye is foolproof, 114. For $83.99, and next to it is that barrel strength bourbon, 117 proof for $50. I don't know why there's such a huge price discrepancy unless there's something that I don't know about it. I would think with them both being similar age statements and proof points, they would be about the same, but I don't know. Now we're into one of my favorite parts of the store, because here at the very back on the end of the aisle is where you get to find some of the really unique things. So you've heard me talk about Hulling Station before. Old Dominic, before they were distilling their own whiskey, put out products that were sourced called Hulling Station. And so they have two different items here. Both of these Our 8-year age statements: 101.5 proof, 100.22 proof. Looks like they were chosen by different groups, but these are both wheat whiskeys. So I bet you this is pretty good. This says 83, let you all read it, 83% wheat, 12% corn, 5% malted barley. Let's take a look at its neighbor. This one says barrel 898 reserve. Yeah, same age statement there. And right next door to it, one of my favorite distilleries, Old Dominic. Can't go wrong with that. I do like to look at their single barrels. 124.7 proof, $59.99. Really hard to beat that proof point or price point. We're going to go down a little bit more to some other really cool bottles. When we talk about Dusties, this is always something that comes to mind. One that has quite the bit of dust on this. This one's called Minor Case Straight Rye Whiskey, Limestone Branch Distillery. 90 proof, but it is finished in a sherry cask. Now you can see that it has been sitting here for a while because even the price tag is starting to fade. So if you're wanting to try something neat and unique, then they got you here for $48. A little ways down, this one's called Digits. It says Savage and Cookie Digits. I know nothing about this. Bourbon whiskey, 92 proof. Digits is a collaboration between Scottie Pippen and Dave Finney that focuses on distinguished and mature bourbon whiskey. Interesting. So more of that collaboration celebrity whiskey. As we move down a little bit farther, one that I have constantly been looking at and never pulled the trigger on is this straight rye whiskey finished in maple cask from Rare Character. 110.8 proof. I really like the bottle. I love a good maple cask. I don't care for the price point. And unfortunately, that is what you're going to pay in most places, not just here. 135.9. Now, right next to it, 15-year barrel proof Houghton Young. I think we've come across one of these at another store. And then several of Starlights. Now, I thought this was supposed to be their like blackberry that was popular several years ago, but this says it's bourbon whiskey finished in sherry barrels. $74.99, 106.4 proof. I'm really intrigued by that one. So down here we have a couple of other really unique whiskeys. The first one is this Yellowbird, 90 proof, 4-year Tennessee straight whiskey for $35.99. Now it looks like this is in tribute to canaries that were released into mines to detect gas leaks. And so it looks like a percentage of the whiskey sales will be donated to the National Audubon Society. So that's kind of cool. Reservoir Distillery, 90 proof, grain with hops from Ardent, then finished in bourbon barrels. Interesting. Not familiar with this in the least. Distilled by Reservoir Distillery in Richmond, Virginia. John Emerald Distilling. There's 3 different offerings. So this looks like, it says John's Alabama Single Malt Whiskey that is distilled from peach and pecan wood, smoked and malted barley. Okay, this looks like it's the same city that I believe Bruzel is from, Opelika, Alabama. 86 proof. And then right next to it is a double oak bourbon. Interesting that they chose to use green. I would usually associate that with rye. The rye is that tan color, and I would typically associate that with a bourbon. Now what's really intriguing is that notice that it doesn't say finished with staves. It is finished with oak chips. So I wonder how that affects the whiskey flavor. I have seen, I think a Little Old Fashioned went to a distillery once that did something similar to it. I think it's supposed to help along with the maturing process, but I don't know. Would you all buy one of these and give it a try? I mean, it's $29.99 for a double oak. Might be worth it. Now, like most stores that we go into, they have a vast selection of store picks that you can choose from. The one that really stands out to me is I love a good rare character. So this is their straight bourbon whiskey at cask strength. So 118.06, 7-year, 4-month age statement, and $99.99. That's a pretty good price for a rare character, especially with that age statement and proof. They definitely don't have a shortage of E.H. Taylor. So if you're looking for it, they have you covered. $64.99. They also have plenty of Blantons with lots of the different letters. I see N, O, B. I bet you could probably... Blanton's Gold. It looks like they have plenty of those. I'm counting 9 boxes, $169, and store pick. So store pick, I feel like that's a pretty decent price. Lots of Bookers. They got last year's January, February, March, and April, all for $129.99. We saved the best for last. They are known for having great bundles. If you're looking for Stag 25D and their store pick of Old Forester, about $99 a pop. So this is actually, in my opinion, a pretty good deal. Getting ready for the Kentucky Derby, they've got this year's bottle release, mint julep, several bottles of the Eagle Rare 10-year, and then if you need that double oak from Woodford, $199.99. All right, guys, another successful bourbon hunt is in the books. We got to see some really cool bottles, learn a little bit more about a particular brand, and saw a bundle of Stag and Old Forester single barrel, which is really hard to pass up. And hey, what about that Blanton's Gold store pick for $169.99? Really hard, in my opinion, to beat that price. Now, you know, as a way of saying thank you to stores for letting me shoot, I like to buy a bottle. So today I'm walking away with the Pinhook High Proof Rye. Now, my wife, when she was younger, really enjoyed horses, and so I thought it'd be kind of cool to get to crack this open with her. Plus, it's a really neat story as far as like getting to have the horses' names and stuff like that on there. All right, guys, well, I certainly appreciate you sticking until the end. I'm your favorite player, one Richard. Have a good one.